Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Waking Up Wealthy podcast. I am your host, Isabela, and today we're going to talk about the invisible influence of identity. And we're going to delve deeper into growing your identity as part of your thought leadership. Whether you want to think about thought leadership online or in your in-person communities, that's up to you. But when we talk about identity, we're also, of course, talking about how much money you make, because you cannot out earn your nervous system. You cannot out earn your identity. And identity is tied into the nervous system because your social nervous system is connected to your ego identity. And that's really what's going to determine on the energetic side how you receive, hold, and manage more, whether it's more abundance, whether it's more love, more money, more goodness in your life, more joy. All of that is going to be affected by your identity, whatever limits you have around that. So the more you expand, the more you can hold of all of what life has to provide for you. But before I get into that, there was something on my mind that I wanted to share with you. Something that I've been observing online, and I say this obviously from a distance, not currently living in the United States, but really recognizing how, you know, I'm going to back up for a minute and say that, I can tap into the energy of the collective. And I've been feeling a lot of panic in the collective about what's happening in our country. And of course, you have every right and a lot of evidence to feel scared about what's happening. And I want to just invite you again and again and again to take a breath, take a moment, pause, feel your feelings, move your body, and really focus on regulation as a tool of activism. Because when we are in a constant state of dysregulation, be it because of rage, fear, grief, anguish, all of which you have a right to feel, when you are in constant cycles of that without also connecting to joy and peace and hope and beauty, you're going to get sick. You're not only going to get physically sick, you're going to get mentally sick. It's going to start affecting the mentals. And so I just want you again to invite yourself to pull back and pull away and really think about how you are being controlled by keeping you in a constant state of rage, grief, fear, and anguish. And the most recent evidence that I've witnessed is around the SNAP benefits being cut off or not paid out. And having worked in food justice and having not only, observed other people receiving food distribution benefits, but myself having received food distribution benefits, I can say that yes, it's very scary. And there are a lot of middle class working families that are going to be heavily impacted by the loss of SNAP benefits. And so what you can do about that, like, well, when we are in a state of perpetual dysregulation and feeling panic and grief about what's happening, we can't make really good decisions. We're not sort of in our, executive functioning place where we're able to make really good decisions. And so I want to just offer a suggestion that you can donate directly to food banks. I know it's tempting to just kind of go into your cupboards and just pull out whatever you can and donate it to the food bank. But what you can do is actually donate regularly to the food bank, whether it's $20 a month, $50 a month, or $100 a month. Like, let's not rely on the government to do that. Let's all give a little bit. Again, what you can, what's within your reach to just offer folks or offer food bank benefits to people, because food banks are able to make that money go a lot farther than just you donating the food. And there are monthly recurring payment options and just like one-time options. And I really invite you to do it on a more consistent basis, because it really is it's an abundance hack. It's really like every time you see that money coming out of your account, you're gonna feel like so abundant that you can give that amount. It really is, for me, was huge when I was still broke, like materially um not flush, as they say. Like my bank account did not reflect abundance. And yet when I gave to the causes that I cared about, it really helped increase that internal experience of abundance. And it actually shaped my identity. So everything that I'm talking to you about today is part of developing the identity of someone who is abundant, who can hold more. So let's talk about invisible influence and the importance of personal development and growing your identity specifically as a leader. So let's talk about it. So, first, what I want to start with is that leadership, identity, and power are all interconnected. And leadership starts with identity. Before you can stand in your authority and influence others, you have to deeply know who you are and to be able to not only lead yourself, but shape yourself. Okay. And I'll get into that as we go on. So the reason why it matters is without the intentional personal development, you're kind of in default mode, right? A lot of the things, like our brain is like functions like 98, what is it? 90 to 98% of our brain functions from our unconscious. And so without doing intentional inner work, you're going to be defaulting to that unconscious even more. So you want to be in a constant state of bringing that unconscious into consciousness so that you can decide, you can make intentional decisions about how you're going to show up, right? Otherwise you're shaped by, you're just reacting or behaving from external expectations, systems of oppression, or what I just talked about, like social media triggers or fear, anguish, grief, whatever it happens to be, and social conditioning obviously as well. So when we talk about leadership is actually the expression of power. How you hold power in your body, right? Like your life force energy, and how you use and share power in your everyday interactions, and how your power impacts other people, right? That's the influence side of things. So, and leadership is how we move through the world and how we relate to others. That is the practice, right? The practice is the everyday. And the capacity to, right, the capacity to hold our power, that is nervous system based. That is part of the process of you knowing who you are. And it's the outcome of the inner work is capacity. And capacity is also like the energy behind that power. So when you are in a, let's say, follower identity, thinking about like, leadership versus follower. So when you are in a follower identity, you often are defined by comparison. Comparing yourself to other people. You're often looking for external validation that what you are thinking and feeling is correct. You are trying to conform, fit in. Yeah, that's the energy of that. And leadership energy, right? So the follower identity is very externally focused. And leadership identity is really rooted in your own self-awareness, this internal authority. And this is especially important in online spaces, right? Because we go online every day, and not comparing ourselves to people who are similar to us is really, really hard. So for me, it is a practice of constantly coming back to myself. It's like, what do I need to say, or what do I need to do, or what do I want, or what do I need in this moment? And then taking action from that place, that is an ongoing practice. So leadership is obviously not about any title or position. It's really about how connected, how deeply connected you are with the multitude and the dimensions of selves that live inside of you, and then how you show up. Okay? So let's talk about the 6 dimensions of identity self-development, or identity development within the scope of self-development. So, and this is specifically now talking about opening yourself up to hold more power, more wealth, more influence in the world. So the first step, or the first dimension rather, is self-awareness. And I'll go into these in more details, just listing them off right now. So the first is self-awareness. The second is raising your associations. The third is expanding your identity through experiences. Fourth is inner healing and trauma resolution. Surprise, surprise. Number 5 is taking radical responsibility. And number 6 is vision and values alignment. So let's go through each of these dimensions one by one. So the first is self-awareness. So there's, again, like so many practices, and having a background in somatics is wonderful, but I don't want you to get into this trap of thinking that somatics is the only way. Obviously, I am a believer that it has to move through the body, but everybody's body is different, and some people can move energy through writing. Some people move energy through meditation or exercise, therapy, obviously, shadow alchemy, right? Depending on how you do it. All of that can be embodied work depending on how you do it. And the reason why self-awareness is so important is because it builds clarity around what you really value. It just brings your energy back internally. It just orients you internally. It helps you become aware of fears, triggers, strengths, the unconscious way you sabotage yourself or hold back. And being that it's Scorpio season, there's a lot of things that have come up into my awareness lately, specifically around like money conversations that I've been having, and like how I share money, right? I feel really kind of flexible around like, oh yeah, I buy the groceries and then you buy the groceries, and yeah, we'll call it even. Like, I'm not the person who'll be like down to the dollar kind of nitpicking that way, because I'm just like, yeah, it'll even out. But what's come to my awareness recently is my reticence or my resistance or my lack of familiarity around practices where I am paying for somebody else's typically or commonly unpaid labor, right? Like when I talk about unpaid labor, I'm talking about societally accepted unpaid labor. So that's been something that's been coming to my awareness lately, and I've been doing a lot of shadow work around like how I support other people in that. Um, I've been doing a lot of trauma resolution work around like my own traumas around like having supported a partner in the past. How likely am I to help other people in my community that maybe remind me of that dynamic? Things like that are things that come up, right, in real time. And we want to be aware of like not just the traumas that happen in early development, but also stuff that happens within our lifetime, right? If we have past relationships where we were exploited financially, those are things that are going to come up. That doesn't have as much to do with identity work, But it really is an opportunity. The self-awareness is an opportunity to ask yourself, um, when do I feel most powerful? What do I do with that power, right? If you have more income than a partner, then in a way you have more power. So how do you share that power? If you have privilege in other ways, whether it's like racial privilege or, pretty privilege or something else, like how do you share that power? When do you shrink back from it, right? How do you step in? How do you pull back from it? How do you share it? So those are all things that you want to be considering as part of that self-awareness. And then number two, right, is the second dimension around growing your identity and increasing your influence is raising your associations. So the traditional idea around raising your associations is that you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And a little bit of a deeper take into that is that you want to be choosing people to be around that are going to mirror your best self back to you. And when I say your best self, I mean the your highest potential, because sometimes we are around people or we hold associations with people who want us to stay at their level, because if we were to increase our power or our influence or even increase our income, it would say something about them, or they would feel some type of way about it, because they may feel like, well, I'm not living to my up to my potential, and you growing into like a next level potential is making me feel like I'm not doing it and I feel ashamed about it, but I don't want to feel that shame, so I'm going to make you feel ashamed about it. I'm going to throw shade. I'm going to be critical. Um, I'm going to make um, comments about it, or I'm going to, maybe it comes off as like jokes or something like that, but you're kind of feeling like this person is not liking that I'm having success in my life. So you want to be surrounding yourself with people who challenge you, but from a very loving place. Obviously, not just success metrics, but really mirroring your best self back to you, meaning like you can do better, or um, you can make more, like you can have more, you deserve better, of like you're worthy of more. People in your circle who are like gassing you up in that good way. So I want to invite you to evaluate not only who you're around, right? Because you don't want to, like, this is not about like hanging out with like people who are financially successful, although that may be part of it, but it really is about being around how the relationships around you shape your identity. Do they expand your identity, or do they encourage you to stay small? That's really what it's about. Okay. Nothing other than that. So the third dimension of increasing your identity is expanding your identity through experiences. So the reason why it is so challenging for people who grew up less fortunate, or not having as like whose families may have not had a lot of money, is that they have a specific type of experience and they haven't had a lot of variation on that experience. So having had sort of this maybe like one-dimensional experience, they have to really expand their identity by having more experiences so that they can grow, right, out of what they once knew, right? So we don't all start our um, identity expansion from that same place. So when we're talking about expanding your identity through experiences, we're talking about reading. You can read books to expand how you think about money, or how you think about power, or how you think about energy, self-development, whatever helps you expand, right? That's sort of like where you want to be focusing your energy on education, whether it's, maybe financial literacy is part of it. Then you also want to expand your identity through experiences. That can be experiences like travel, is what I wanted to say. That's been a huge part of my children's expansion this year and in the coming years as we travel more, is really expanding um, like what they are worthy of. Because here in Indonesia, we've had different experiences of luxury, and we have conversations about it. Like, I'm not like huge on luxury, but I also want them to have experiences of luxury so that they just have it um, as a frame of reference. Like, yes, I've had that experience. Like, I just want them to be able to say, I've had that experience, so that they're not intimidated by an experience of luxury when they get older. They'd be like, oh, yeah, just the same way that I had the experience of luxury growing up when I was able to fly business and first class because my mother had flight benefits. And that was incredibly beneficial to me later because I had experience where I walked into spaces that were like, that next level up. And it didn't affect me. Like, I didn't have that imposter phenomenon happen or feeling of unworthiness because I had already had that experience. It was a known thing, and my nervous system wasn't freaked out about it. Okay. So I hope that you are picking up what I'm putting down. Um, so you want to be learning new skills. And in sort of if we're talking about an experience around money, you want to be expanding your literacy, or maybe like for me, it was also when I worked in accounting a long, long time ago, eons ago in my 20s. And I worked in an accounting office or in a real estate acquisitions. I know it's totally evil. Um, but I worked in their accounting department, and I moved millions of dollars a day. Like, I moved millions of dollars a day. And that actually, like, seeing those numbers was really having that experience was incredible. It was also like a bad corporate experience, but it actually helped grow my identity because I wasn't intimidated by those numbers. And just a really funny story I want to tell here. Like, when my mom came to visit recently, um, she could not deal with like the currency exchange. She would keep handing me like 4,000 Indonesian rupiahs, thinking it was 40,000. And she just kept missing a zero because she could not conceive of like bills or like numbers in those amounts. And I was like, Mom, like 4,000 rupiah is like a couple of cents. Like, don't. It's 40,000. 40,000 is like $2.50, right? So she just kept there was like a real um limit to what she was able to like the numbers that she was like, I don't know how to say it, but let me think here. The numbers she was permitting herself to handle, let's put it that way. And because I had already handled millions of dollars, that wasn't as uncomfortable to me. And working in financial services, I also work with $1 million, and right, it's like I talk to people about $7 million, and I'm just kind of like, the first time I saw that number, I was like, oh my gosh. And then I was like, oh, this is like normal now. 4 million, that's not a big deal, right? And my identity has grown to be able to hold that number and feel like, yeah, I could have that, and I would be like, ooh, really excited about it, versus being like, oh my God, I don't know what to do with this, and that's so much, da, 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 right? That's a different experience. So you can immerse yourself in new cultures. New cultures can mean obviously like travel, but it can also mean immersing yourself in new cultures can be new groups of people. It can be groups of um, people who have high identity, and being around those people will obviously affect your identity. Um, I've had good and bad experiences with that. Sometimes I've been in spaces where people have high identities or let's say high net worth, and I've felt really awful in those spaces. And I've had experiences with people who have very high identity and high net worth that have been really positive. And it's really all been in how they relate to me and how friendly they are. And, because some people have that high identity, but they're not necessarily wanting to share what they know with you. They're just kind of more gatekeepy kind of energy. But I've also been in spaces where it's been very welcoming and like, let me show you how I did it. And I want to, I want to offer my wisdom to you or whatever I know. I want you to achieve the same success. So each new experience that you have adds another dimension of who you are. And I know this sounds wild, but I also think that expanding your identity through experiences can happen like in polyamory. I remember when I was dating and I was polyamorous, I actually learned about new parts of myself by dating multiple people and being like, oh, with this person, this part comes out. And with this person, this other part comes out. And these were parts of myself that I didn't know previously because I had been monogamous and I had been married. And so that was really exciting to me. I think a lot of what made polyamory really exciting was learning around new parts of my personality, and it created more dimensionality to hold. So that was really fun. That's a fun way of developing your identity. But number four, the fourth dimension of expanding your identity is obviously the inner healing and trauma resolution. And we could do podcast episodes about that, and maybe I will. But just to touch on it today, as a leader, if you consider yourself a leader or want to be a leader, if you want to lead groups, teams, people, have some sort of impact, again, whether it's in your online community or in person, you have to do your inner work. And yes, we see leaders every day who have not done their inner work, and you see the influence that they have. And I know that you don't want to have that type of influence. So you want to be standing in an authority that is clean, that is like energetically clean, right? That feels good to other people who are around you, that attracts people who want to do good in the world and are excited about helping others and that really are like collectively minded, right? All of those things. And again, however you want to do that inner healing is up to you. There's so many modalities, so many ways. There's therapy, breath work, massage, even internal family systems, grief work. Um, an example of this would be an example of increasing that power is, excuse me, someone resolving a childhood pattern of people pleasing and becoming a leader who sets boundaries and who sets them unapologetically and who is very clear about their why they're setting them and does it in a way that's compassionate but very clear, like, yes, this is what we do and this is how we are moving forward, without having to like, oh, hem and haw about it, and I need to set this boundary, but I'm worried because this person is, oh God. Yes, you may sometimes feel that, but the more power you allow yourself to hold, the more it becomes easy to set those boundaries. And that's why you want to be doing that fourth dimension of identity development, which is the inner healing and trauma resolution. And menopause helps, by the way, because menopause allows you to not give a shit anymore. And my God, is that liberating? People don't talk about that enough. Okay, so the fifth dimension, second to last dimension, is taking radical responsibility. So radical responsibility is so vitally important because it takes you out of that victim consciousness. Because the opposite of taking radical responsibility is blaming other people, blaming circumstances, blaming the government, blaming, the president or your partner or the people around you. When you take radical responsibility, you can really look at yourself clearly and you take ownership. You own your choices, you own your results, you're not blaming circumstances or other people, and you own it by saying like, I'm the kind of person who does this, right? If you're in business and you're not having the results that you want, it is an invitation to look at yourself and saying, how am I not showing up for myself? Or where have I not developed systems in a proper way? Am I sabotaging myself in some way here? Am I collapsing, or am I not showing up in my marketing and sales in a way that is really beneficial to me? Or am I not being of service very much? or as much as I can be. Um, if your team, if you have if you're leading a team and they're disappearing on you, or you're not bringing people onto the team that are sticking around or that have a specific type of personality, well, how am I showing up that attracts that type of person, right? It just brings in, like, you orient back to yourself and you ask yourself, what am I doing that is perhaps causing this? And of course, I'm not saying that you are the cause of everything. It's just that there's a percentage of however you're experiencing your environment that is up to you. And this is where things like existential kink come really handy, because evidence external evidence is evidence of wanting. Like, your external circumstances are evidence of wanting. So it's like, oh, this thing that I don't want, I must somehow want it. And we're not talking about abuse situations. We're talking about benign circumstances. Like, I'm in the situation that I don't really like. What part of me is creating that, right? And again, it can just be a small percentage of what you're experiencing, because of course, life's and life throws us curveballs. Okay. And so the sixth dimension of developing your identity and having influence is vision and values alignment. So leaders, people who are influential, people who allow themselves to hold a lot of power, they develop a really strong internal compass. And this, I absolutely love this, because this is where your intuition is so valid, and orienting back to whether it's ancestors, guides, spirit, however you want to call it, God, you can get all of that guidance from spirit. Like, it doesn't have to be like so individualized. Like, for me, every step in everything that I do is guided, and that just, like, I'm taking responsibility for all the moves I make, but I'm also getting help, so I don't have to do it alone. Um, but sometimes it can be accessing your guides, but it's also like identifying what your core values are. And it can be vision boarding. It can be writing a personal manifesto about, like, this is what I want to create. This is the legacy that I want to build. This is, everything, every post that I write, or every event that I hold goes back to this big vision, right? That I am working towards. Everything that I do is like, has that bigger vision in mind, right? And this is absolutely necessary. If you want to influence a lot of people, you have to have the vision. You have to have a vision, and you have to have your values that come through your behavior, your words, your actions. They have to be in alignment with that vision. Yeah. So, just kind of summarizing again: self-awareness, raising your associations, expanding your identity through experiences, inner healing and trauma resolution, taking radical responsibility, and vision and values alignment. Yeah, and one really helpful practice that I was just speaking about a moment ago, the way that I used to do this, like, in terms of, like, having the big vision and then having everything that you do on a daily basis move you towards that, is that I would write down my deepest desires for where I wanted to be. And at that time, it was like a specific places I wanted to be in my business. And it included who I wanted to be in order to fulfill those goals. And every morning, I would write down 3 actions that were going to take me towards that goal. And it could be as simple as, like, post about this, or um, fix your link on Linktree. I don't know. It can be silly things like that. But all of it was all of these incremental little steps that would get me towards that bigger goal. And in the evening, I would do an audit on those actions. Where did I rise in leadership? Where did I rise to the occasion for that bigger goal? How did I show up for myself in that bigger goal? Where did I feel challenged to step into my personal power? Did I speak from truth today? Can I receive support to do it better next time? Really kind of doing that inventory. And so, one thing that I really want you to take away from this is that identity development, stepping into more power, holding more of yourself, holding more money, that is about building capacity through identity transformation. And you have to, like, in order for you to do that, you have to become masterful in the process of death and rebirth. So you have to be willing to be incredibly uncomfortable at times. And there were periods in my life, I would say, like, in the last 5 years, 4 out of those 5 years, I was incredibly uncomfortable. And I would joke about it, like, oh, da, da, da. People, oh, yeah, I'm uncomfortable. I've become like a master at being uncomfortable. And that's where I was experiencing the most growth. And discomfort can come through wonderful experiences as well, like receiving more than you expect to receive. Having a big influx of cash can be uncomfortable. That is also growth promoting. So I don't want you to think about having it associate only like with negative or unpleasant things. It can be a lot of joy coming in that makes you feel uncomfortable. So just I want you to take away from this, uh, personal development is around, and identity development specifically is about remembering who you are, expanding what's possible for you, standing in your own authentic authority, trusting yourself. It always comes back to trusting yourself. And the part of the identity development piece that I've spoken about before is that when you understand and know all of the dimensions and continue to get to know all of the dimensions about who you are, you create safety within your body, right? For example, there are aspects of my personality that I I wouldn't say I love them, but I really accept them. Um, and they're just kind of like they're just there. I don't want to fix them. I don't want to push them away. I don't wish they were not there. I'm just kind of like, okay, you're there. And it's parts of me that like don't want to give. They're just very greedy and very selfish. And when I feel them come up, they're just there. And that's part of being able to hold all parts of yourself. It's not about fixing all those parts. It's like, yep, I have parts of my personality that that are diametrically opposed to everything that I value. Right? And those are my shadow aspects, and they're there. They get to be around. I feel them rise up sometimes, and I'm just kind of like, ooh, you're feeling very big right now. And I am able to hold space for them, and that builds capacity. So those kinds of experiences are expansion experiences. So focusing on that inner work, identity growth is going to be supporting you in being a stronger leader and having more influence. And the more inner work that you do, this will also help you guide other people through their own leadership expansion, their identity expansion. So the more work that you do for within yourself, that's going to help you hold space for other people as well. All right, that's it for today. I hope this was helpful. If it was, please share with someone from your community, someone that you love, someone that you think needs to hear this. That's how we spread the love and share the message and, yeah, share the mission as well. All right. Love you. Until next episode. Bye.